Friends, the Christian life, this vocation to holiness would be great. It'd be easy if life would just pause for a moment and let us catch our breath, but it doesn't. Today we're talking about holding fast to what we know to be true in the Christian life, a life of virtue, even amidst the changing of the seasons of life. We'll talk to you in a minute. Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. I'm your host, JonMarc Grodi.
I'm Teresa Grodi.
And we're back with another extraordinary, hopefully, conversation about the ordinary pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. Thanks for being a part of this show. Thank you for being part of this Manor at St. Anne's community, this community of people looking for those opportunities that God is calling us to grow in holiness, to imitate Him in our ordinary lives. The Manor at St. Anne's community. That is the name of our patron community that you can be a part of. If you can find your way to support this show, go to elevateordinary.com to learn about that and how you can do that. And to get access to that, download the Awaken app at theawakenapp.io. That's the best place to follow this show and other Awaken Catholic shows, other good stuff, songs, prayers, other good stuff, as well as the patron community for this show. We invite you to be a part of that. So today we're talking about virtues more. We've talked, well, let me say this. We've talked a lot about virtues, and that's one of our main frameworks that we like to use to look.
But we want to bring virtues into the ordinary aspects of everyday life, which is where the virtues belong.
Exactly. Yeah, that's our kind of our frame. We're looking at the ordinary things and saying, okay, what's the opportunity that we're missing here? We're not just quite seeing it, and so, but with that in mind, sometimes it's easy to conceptualize the virtues and how I can take the opportunities if life would just stay exactly as it is right now. If I had the rest of my life to just figure out today, maybe I could scratch the surface on how to make a use of it. But life's always changing.
Yeah, if I could just pause all of my five kids and freeze them in time while I was having a bad day and could regroup.
Come back.
But that's not how life works, okay? And the church has been thinking about this for a long time, and they have lots of practicals to offer. Recently, I was invited to speak to a group of a huge group of women at St. Joe's in Sylvania, Ohio. And it was really cool. I met some listeners to the show, which was awesome. I didn't realize people listen to the show.
It's kind of terrifying when you think of it. I was sure that we were safe here, but
I know. I kind of thought I was just talking to myself here. But I was invited to give a talk about transitions through the seasons of life. Mm-hmm. And since I've only been through 37 seasons, I needed to lean heavily on the church to discuss this. So this is actually based off of my talk, and I think it went okay. I think it's helpful.
Nice.
So
that's what we do with the show. We go off and give talks, and then one of us is watching the kids, so we have to come back here and give the talk to each other, so I can actually hear it. I'm excited. I'm going to sit back.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he doesn't know what I talked about. So the church gives us some basic rules about going through a hard time. If anyone's interested in St. Ignatius of Loyola, he wrote the Discernment of Spirits. Actually, he discerned these spirits while he was recovering from having a leg taken off by a cannonball.
Some days you're the dog, some days you're the hydrant, some day your leg gets taken off by a cannonball. That's just how life
But it gave him a lot of time to think. And during these thinking times, he figured out the general rules of how God and the devil speak into our daily lives. And some of these rules are really appropriate for going through difficult times, and when you're not in difficult times, how to prepare for the suffering that will inevitably come because we live in this world on this side of heaven. So first I want to talk about the basic rules when going through a hard time. And second, I want to talk about how the virtues, particular virtues in general, or particular virtues, can help us grow to be stable people so that you can weather the things that come. And I think that sometimes, you look at certain people and they appear to be perfect, or they're always even keel, and they just always say or do the right thing. And you're just like, I didn't get those genes. But it may be because they've spent a lot of time weathering suffering, learning to grow in virtue so that when that time comes, it seems like all of their decisions are perfect, right?
And they've spent time embracing that bit of ordinariness. Again, if we think about what's the ordinary bit of life that we're trying to elevate and scratch the surface on and understand better in this episode, well, it's change, right? It's the reality of just our life is changing. It's one of my favorite quotes from C.S. Lewis, we've quoted it here before, is, and I'm going to really loosely paraphrase, but he's talking about how we get this image in our mind of what our life is. Oh, my life is all this stuff, and it's all put in its perfect place, and I've been prudent, and I've arranged it all, and I've got it all figured out. And that's good, that's important. But then we begin to make an idol out of that image of our perfect life. And then when God sends us curveballs, or when the kid interrupts us, or somebody shows up at our door, we're like, no, you're interrupting my perfect life. We're like Lord Farquaad from the Shrek, like my perfect world, But that's not how it works. Change is part of life. That is part of your life. In fact, that is the life that God is sending you. And so, again, if part of what we're doing here in the show is elevating the ordinary, we're looking at the ordinary, normal parts of life, and with the lens of the virtues, trying to see, how are we missing these opportunities that God is sending us? How are the inconveniences that are in our lives, how are we missing the reality that those are an adventure to be embraced? Well, that's what we're digging into, that the change is inevitable. Are we ready to embrace it? And
And then at the end of the episode, I want to briefly go through 4 stages in life and kind of pull out maybe some practicals, because I'm a big practical person. I'm learning how to be a general, big thinking philosopher kind of person, being married to my husband, but I tend to be a more practical and logistical person. So I want to talk about certain ways that in your particular stage of life, you can think about future stages of life or help people in other stages of life, or be a Christian.
I'm excited for this.
All right, let's do this.
Dig into it.
So, discernment of spirit, St. Ignatius of Loyola. Mm-hmm. Rules for bad seasons, what I call it, not what he calls it.
You have the best words,
Desolation.
babe. You have the best words of all the words.
I know. I was watching.
Everyone says so. I've asked all of them, yes.
I had to edit an episode, and I think I made up a word in one episode. It's just not a real word. So, oh well. So he would call it desolation. In bad seasons, when I am desolate or I've got seasonal affective disorder, I'm feeling lazy or whatever, I kind of just want to like run to my hole, sit on the couch, eat junk food, watch TV, and just like wait for it to pass. But oddly enough, that's not what St. Ignatius of Loyola says will help you in times of desolation. So rule number 1, this is not really rule number 1 out of the 14, but my rule number 1. In times of desolation, never make a change, but be firm and constant in the resolutions and determinations in which one was the day before such desolation. So do not make drastic changes to your established schedule without really good counsel. And not the friend who loves to be lazy too, who will just tell you, it's fine.
Girlfriend.
Yeah, I don't know. I know, right? I am that girlfriend sometimes. But stay firm to the decisions that you made when you were in your right frame of mind, basically is what he's saying. And number 2, however, insist on more prayer, more meditation, more spiritual reading. And this is my addition, like more exercise, more coming out of oneself, more offering service to others and offering it up as penance, because we want to run to our little holes and watch comfort TV and eat comfort food. But really the antidote to bad desolation times is to come out of yourself, come out of that, stick to the schedule you had, stick to the prayer routine that you had, and, maybe slightly increase the prayer routine. You don't want to go crazy, and burn yourself out any further, but just, if you fast if you normally fast, let's say between meals or something like that, and you don't go without snacks, go 1 minute longer, is what St. Ignatius would say, like go 1 minute longer. Don't go an extra day longer. Don't skip an entire meal, but just push yourself 1 extra minute and offer that minute up as penance. Examine your own labor in patience, thinking of how you will soon be consoled. Remember that your life wasn't always like this, and that it probably won't exist like this forever. This may be like TMI, but this is where I always go. Women in their cycles, like this is important to remember, to recognize as a teenager. Teenagers oftentimes are not like teenage girls are like not looking at their cycles and thinking it affects their lives. But you can get to a place where you're feeling so good because it's at a certain time in your cycle where you're biologically just feeling better. And then you go back into this depressive time, or this time when you don't feel great, feel bad about yourself, or maybe you even have an inordinate, like a swing that you shouldn't have, or depression, or really like dark thoughts. If you think that that is going to last forever, that's when teenagers do really bad things, you know, and feel like I'm never going to get out of this. I thought I fixed it. I thought it was over, you know. So labor in patience, knowing that you will soon be consoled. Like, is this going to last forever?
Yeah.
Did I have good times in my life? Did I have good relationships? And number 4, examine your own actions for any negligence or prolonged shift. Sorry, I'm pregnant and I'm out of breath. But this won't last forever. Like a holiday or laziness or like poor habits in the evening. We do that a lot. Like we have a lot of late nights watching TV and eating chicken wings, and then we wonder why like we can't get up and pray, or our life feels like it's falling apart, you know, or not making time for prayer. So those are 4 basic rules that the church gives us in times of distress.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts?
Oh, a bunch of
Bring
thoughts.
it
So I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is, first of all, it's good for us to understand the reality of, so we're talking about kind of mini seasons of life right now, day to day, week to week, month to month, kind of the up and down, the ebb and flow of our affective experience of our life. Some days it's good, some days it's bad. Now, it's also good to have the distinction in there that sometimes it's affected by our bodily state, right? Like I haven't been eating well, I haven't been sleeping well, maybe the weather's changing, and that it has impacted this a lot. And that's good to know, because if you can see that, oh, hey, I didn't sleep well for 3 nights and now I'm feeling kind of crappy. Like I shouldn't conclude that, you know, like
prayer doesn't work in the morning.
Prayer, yeah, that's right. Prayer doesn't work.
I'm going to stop praying.
No, I need to work on my sleep schedule and take heart that things can get better. Now, there can be a physical side to this, but even when you kind of are working on that side, then there can be a more spiritual up and down as well. That's just part of the spiritual life too. But it's good to eliminate the low-hanging fruit. Like, oh, have I been eating well? Have I been sleeping well? Am I getting some exercise? Those things are important. Okay, so you attend to those, and you hold to that self-care in obedience to God and as a steward of your body, even when times are rough. Now, then within that, then kind of a step deeper, as he gave us too, is then, okay, well, on a more spiritual level, like, have I actually been praying? Have I been, you know, are there sins I'm holding on to? Have I been doing anything spiritually that is contributing to this spiritual state that I'm in? And so that's to attend to too. Oh, I haven't been to confession for a while. That happens a lot with us. Like we realize, oh, I haven't necessarily mortally sinned, but there's just been a real buildup of just lots of little things, and I'm feeling the weight of it. So you attend to that. Now, even with all that, then sometimes our life does, even so, our spiritual life does just have times of this consolation and desolation. That's just part of the undulation of the spiritual life. And so, as he said, even in those times, even if I can't see anything I've been doing wrong to contribute to this, well, then I hold fast and I remember, well, hey, this comes and goes. This is a time to hold fast to what I know to be true, even though the feelings have left. That was one of C.S. Lewis's definitions of faith, holding fast to what I knew to be true, even when the feelings have temporarily left me. And so you hold fast to what you know to be true. You hold fast to the prudent decisions you previously made, the schedule you made for yourself, the ways you were going to care for yourself and keep your life in order. You hold to those knowing that this too will pass, and there will be a better time to re-examine this and make any changes. But now is the time to hold fast.
Yeah, and St. Ignatius, one of his rules for consolation is that essentially in good seasons, you have work to do.
Right.
You need to think about a stable schedule that you can set up. You need to think about your state in life and what prayer and sacraments that requires and how frequently. That will look really, really different for mothers with young children than it will with single college students. But in consolation, you have work to do to prepare yourself to not be unfaithful to the Lord during times of tribulation.
Yeah.
And so
this is an important one for me. Yeah.
The way in which we become good, stable people for the seasons ahead of time is we grow in the virtues. Okay, so I want to talk about some specific virtues that maybe I'm sure we've mentioned here or talked about here, but it specifically how it helps you weather a situation, make good decisions, and prepare yourself for times to come. So the number one virtue is prudence. Turning towards reality, turning towards the reality of the situation and making decisions based on that reality.
And again, so going back to just what we were talking about, this is the all-important human virtue. Now, again, there are the theological virtues in terms, but those are different in the sense of those are graces we're looking to receive from God. Those are the graces of the relationship with God. On the human level, insofar as we engage our free will, we engage our freedom to make choices, to do things in response to grace, prudence is always the first step. And it's so important when we're talking about consolation and desolation, because precisely in action, what prudence so often is stepping aside from the current feelings, which may or may not bear any relation to the reality of the situation at this moment. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The point is, it's stepping aside from those to say, no, what do I know to be true reasonably, even though my feelings might be all over the place? Like it got dark today and now I'm just depressed as all get out.
That's me.
No, but what I know to be true, it's holding fast to that and saying that has to be the guiding principle, attending to truth, and so then attending to the truth of the time of consolation and desolation. I was going to just say about the consolation, like I have the big problem. Actually, I feel like I do better when I'm a little desolate. Like then it's like, okay, I'm working hard and life seems terrible, but I'm going to get down and make a schedule. It's as soon as things get good, get organized, it's like, oh, well now I can relax. And it's like, no, that's the time to really to work on your schedule, to work on yourself, to work on being prepared for when and if things get goofy again. But yeah, prudence is that virtue, the habit of turning to truth and trying to remain there and hold on to that even when life is feeling really difficult and dark.
Yeah, and I think the most important reality to turn to, especially when you're in a difficult season in life, is that God exists and that he is faithful. God exists and he is faithful. He is a faithful, abundantly giving, gracious giver, a father who wants to take care of us and wants all good things for us. Yeah. Even if those good things, even if the purification hurts, right? But that he exists and he is faithful, and that what the church teaches is real. And that's the first reality you need to turn towards, because that is very difficult. When people are telling you food shortages are coming and there's going to be no gifts for Halloween Christmas. And, the
other people are out to get you.
Yeah. They're not delivering things. You have to stay in your homes, but they're not delivering things because everything's backed up, and you're just like, sometimes it's very hard. Like when you're Peter walking on the water and there's like waves and stuff going everywhere, that is a really hard reality to attend to.
It's a great image of prudence, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, the waves, the wind and stuff.
Because you will sink.
But Jesus is there.
Yeah.
And everything else has to be in the context of that reality that I'm holding fast to,
Yeah. Yeah. So if everything that the Catholic Church teaches is true, what if I actually acted as if this were true? Okay, so what if I actually acted in this situation as if God is a gracious and good and giving Father who always has me in his arms? What about this is a season in life? Okay, what about this situation is a season in life, and what is permanent? Yeah. How long will this last? Am I being realistic about my role? What are my fears? What are my desires? How am I managing those fears? How am I asking for what I need? This is very difficult.
That's a really good.
Yeah.
That whole line item there is really important. Yeah. In those moments, I have to hold fast to what I already decided, my rule of life, all that kind of stuff. But look for ways in which I'm actually not living according to that. I'm taking on more than I ought to. I'm you mentioned asking for help. Like, had I sort of like subconsciously decided I need to do this all on my own, and I'm now realizing, oh, that worked when I was in consolation, and now the bottom's falling out of the boat because I'm realizing I shouldn't have been relying on myself. I should have been reaching out to others, calling, asking for help, collaborating with somebody. That may be what I need to attend to.
And Lord, who is the person you want to help me? Because sometimes I'm very logistics oriented. So when I want to plan something, I'm already thinking about delegating, and I'm thinking about who I'm going to delegate to or how I'm going to find volunteers to delegate to it. And sometimes if I just take a moment in prayer, it's almost like a light switch where God will be like, try this person first. Yeah. And it turns out to be like a win-win situation, or they were looking for a way to give, or they were looking for this situation to work this way. So yeah, just am I asking for what I need? Am I afraid my husband is going to think less of me because I need help in this situation? That's something that, geez, what a turning point in our marriage to be able to be like really vulnerable and say like, I need help with this. Right. I can't do all of the errands I have for this day, but they all have to get done. Like, can you take your lunch break and do X, Y, Z, which feels like a failure. But it's just turning towards reality and saying, I'm not a superhuman person because I've got like these 5 kids in tow. and again, it takes me 10 times as long to do anything.
As you said, again, as you're trying to attend to the reality of the situation, if we're looking at this all in the context of a good and loving Father God who is all good and knowing and powerful and provident, then again, the way that we have to try, again, despite our fleeting, goofy feelings, perhaps at a given moment, we're trying to hold fast to the truth that if he's allowing me to go through this, there's some good to be gotten out of it. There's some good in it. And I think sometimes the reason that we have times of desolation is that it's only in those moments that we can ask some of these more difficult questions. Again, in good times, have I been completely self-reliant? Have I actually been growing in this kind of fierce independence? I got it all together. I'm doing it all myself. I don't need you, God. I don't need you, neighbor. I got it all myself. Well, God then allows us to experience those times when we see our weakness. We feel the futility of it, precisely so that we'll turn back outward. But we have to be trying to see those times through that lens. What's the opportunity here? What is the new bit of truth that God's trying to show me?
Yeah, all of the virtues. Well, all of the human virtues. Yes. I'm not a philosopher, so you'll have to change my wording if it's wrong.
Yep.
I really hinge on reality. Okay, so there are other examples of like just to flesh it out. Sometimes it's good to think about the vices that oppose the virtues, so we can better understand them. So other responses to reality would be pride and sloth. Right. So they're both, pride and sloth are both a way of escaping reality. Pride says that this reality is beneath me. It's this thing that I'm looking down on, and I am bigger than that, and I am better than that. And then sloth is you're looking up at this reality, and you're just thinking like, oh, this is too much. I can't do this. This looks like a good and great and wonderful thing, but I just can't. I'm just going to sit on my couch.
They're both Satan's I will not serve. Non serviam. I will not serve. God, they're both a no to reality and the reality's author. They both kind of go in a different direction, different attitude, different ethos, but really they're intertwined. They're two sides of the same coin of one way or the other saying no to reality. Whereas, as you started with, prudence is turning
towards reality. And one of the fruit virtues, I guess, is humility.
Yeah, that's rock solid.
In which you, like, I'm embracing the truth, the reality of who God is and who I am. That's humility.
Yeah,
who God is and who I am.
I'm here for it. I want to be a person of reality. I love reality. That's your thing. Now.
Yeah, and then humility. Out of humility, magnanimity is born, the virtue by which man pursues what is great and honorable in his life, even if it's difficult. So the fruit of prudence in difficult situations is that you will end up with humility and magnanimity, where you do see these people who see these great things and are not afraid.
Let me sum it up for the youths out there. If you can't even right now,
I don't think that's youths anymore.
Is that not youth?
Babe.
Is that us?
Yeah.
I'm getting old. No, but like whenever that should become a little trigger in us. Whenever we find ourselves unable to face reality, like when we're feeling like this is hopeless, like we can't do, we have to recognize we're falling into one of those poles of pride or sloth, either a despair about what the reality that God has made, or a pride. We're resisting the truth in some way, but we have to recognize too that takes all the stuffing out of our ability to be magnanimous, to be courageous, to, in God's, with God's grace, in his presence, in trust in him, to be able to have this great-heartedness. That's what magnanimity means, great-heartedness. Well, that great-heartedness comes out of humility, which means embracing the truth, looking at reality. So whenever we're feeling like I just can't even well, which of those are we falling into, that pride or that sloth? And how do we need to return in humility to what is just real and true? And from there, God can rejuvenate our courage, our magnanimity, our this holy upward ambition to grab onto all that God wants to give us in life. Yeah.
I want to skip some of the cardinal virtues and go to the sub-virtue.
How dare you? How dare you?
I don't know. Of patience. Patience.
It's a sub-virtue of courage or fortitude. Yeah.
How does this help us become a stable person? Well, I think understanding what the definition of patience is.
Patience is not.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think I've mentioned on here, I used to think patience was just not punching, getting through a situation like wide-eyed and white-knuckled and just like, I didn't scream
patient.
at anyone. I didn't throw that customer's food in their face. I wasn't that kind of a waitress. I was actually a pretty good waitress. Patience is guarding the peace of Christ within you. Like, there's a peace that only God can give, and there's a place inside of us. We all know, where that rests and where he dwells in us and he speaks to us. And patience is guarding that peace at all costs.
Right.
So there are times, and you've been there and you've wondered, like, why did I almost have a panic attack in this situation? And why in this situation did I just come out of it great? Mm-hmm. And I think that was probably what was acting within myself, is that, okay, I'm not going to upset this inner peace. I'm not going to cut myself off from being able to be a rational person and getting too angry or getting too wound up. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to kind of observe what's happening around me and act in ways I need to act, but not react, just like you're just guarding this place so that the work of God and his indwelling can continue to influence the situation. Yeah. That's what patience is.
Right.
That's a huge difference between getting red-faced and just not getting out of that situation.
Because once you've done that, you've already lost patience. I mean, examine our language is so philosophical. If you just examine our common phraseology, there's so much philosophy just baked in. We always talk about losing your temper, losing your patience. Well, again,
losing your temper
is that
oh
there's
my gosh.
That in your heart of hearts, where you're holding on to, again, in prudence, you're holding on to, I know what the truth is. The truth is that everything's going to be okay.
Oh, we haven't talked about temperance yet.
Romans 8:28, like all things work together for good for those who love God. Do I hold on to that? If that's true, then I never need to worry. I never need to lose my cool. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't mean I don't experience emotions. Doesn't mean that things are difficult, but it's that on the deepest level, I hold on to that truth so that I can then I can deal with these things according to what they are. But once we lose that patience, and then it's like I just become an anger ball. It's like the deepest part of me is just anger now. And then I have to go off and get calmed down because I've let go of something true and permanent, and what's entered in is just my anger.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the difference between reacting when you ought. Okay, so like a knee-jerk reaction where you grab a child because they're walking out in the road or whatever. Mm-hmm. So the opposite of patience then is reacting in situations where you ought not react, right? Which is 99.9% of our life. We don't need to have knee-jerk reactions to things, right? We're not actually stopping someone from falling off of a precipice, or putting out a fire or something like that. 99.9% of the time, we are safe.
Well, yeah. Let me put this in terms of, actually, I was just at the diocesan education conference recently. One of the speakers, I can't remember her name right now, but she was talking about, I think she was talking about the virtue of patience. And she was talking about how patience as a sub-virtue of courage really deals with our human fight, flight, or freeze response, right? And that there's a liminal space between the stimulus and then one of those responses where we can guide our body, guide our passions to stay in the truth of the reality that I'm not really in danger. I'm not getting eaten by a bear right now. Your body, if you're about to get eaten by a bear, your body will do some things reactively, and that's good. But 99% of the time, that's not what's actually happening. But we still have the same bodily response, especially if we've been conditioned to do so. The milk spills, and then your body's instantly in it's the end of the world, But you can make a decision, and you can practice
only if it's breast
and get
milk.
better and better. No! You can get better at that happens, and you hold yourself in the truth. This is okay. It's just milk. There's no use crying over spilled milk or freaking out or getting angry. It's just milk. Yeah. And that's patience, is holding on to that. And again, as a virtue, as a habit, the more we practice it, the more we're able to kind of maintain that slight distance between.
And patience allows you to attend to reality. It allows you to be prudent because it gives you that space between your inner self and the outside world that's trying to come in and have you make decisions on it.
Right.
So patience, justice, giving each his due, or as my husband likes to say, which I really appreciate, embracing the web of relationships in your life. They are real and exert real demands and responsibilities. The relationship with God is real. The relationship with spouse is real. The relationship with child is real. The relationship with employer is real. The relationship with neighbor is real, like your physical neighbor for sure.
This is a good example of one where we especially need to attend to it and work on it in times of consolation, right? When the sky is clear, and things is bright, it's bright out, and we're feeling good about life. That's the time to do the soul work of saying, okay, Lord, I want to think through this. What are the different aspects of my life? Are they in order? Do those priorities, are they reflected in my schedule, in my money, in my attention? And how do I, make a plan of life to reflect the truth of that web of relationships, God first and spouse and kids, etc.
Yeah.
But you can't do that when it feels like the world's coming to an end. That's something for the good times, so that then you have that rational content, the truths of what I owe to God and family and neighbor. I've already thought through and kind of worked that out and been practicing that. So then when things feel bad, then I can hold fast to that.
Well, so I think when, practical for when you do need to attend to the web of relationships in your life and your justice in your life during a difficult situation, you can look at the people who are a part of that situation, call them together, and have kind of like a common rallying cry. We did this recently when we were taking care of my dad after his surgery, where we went one dinner, we were with the kids, and we were like, guys, this is going to be such an honor. My dad took care of me when I was a baby. He stayed up late nights rocking me and fed me and worked for me. And now Grandpa needs help. And we get to have him under this roof, and we get to cook for him and bring him, and play with him and puzzles.
But we're going to work together.
Yeah, and it's going to be different. We gave up our playroom, which our house is super small. We've got 3 bedrooms. And the biggest one I have put aside is the playroom. Because the kids just sleep in their bedroom. They don't need to play in there. So, it was difficult. The kids the first couple of days were like, this is different. I wish it would go back the way it was. And we were able to say, how long is this going to last? Grandpa's only going to be here for, a month or so. And then he'll go back to his home. But it's so great that we're going to have him here. And you can go in there and play board games with him. And he can come out here and have meals with us. And so when you do have to attend to these difficult situations that come your way, you can look at the relationships in your life, the relationships that it affects, and say, guys, let's rally, how this is going to last for X long. These are the goals that we need to accomplish. This is the dignity of the other people that we need to attend to. So let's do this. Yeah. And then when one person gets down, the other person, I think I had said to you a few times, it's not going to last forever. Yeah. It's just, and this is right and it's just, and, it's it's building up our treasure in heaven, very truly.
I think another aspect of justice, again, talking about transitions and seasons of life, is that, so again, on the one hand, I think that that's something we have to work out and think through and make a plan for during the good times, during consolation. But then when we enter into a time of desolation, when life is seeming hard and difficult and overwhelming, it's always best, I think, in terms of justice, to kind of move higher or lower on the ladder, depending on how you conceptualize it. Move back toward the higher priority, the more fundamental, when it's difficult. So, like, again, if life is overwhelming, make sure, like, maybe life is overwhelming at work. Well, make sure, like, I'm attending to my family. Family is overwhelming. Make sure I'm attending to prayer. Like, go back to the more primary thing and make sure that you're not missing something there. You're holding to that, because part of what justice does is it protects this cascade of grace in our lives. It keeps it connected. Like, I can't be a successful guy at work if I'm not taking care of my family. I can't be a successful father, good father, if I'm ignoring my wife. I can't be a good husband if I'm not glorifying and worshiping my God. That there's a cascade of grace there, and I need to keep it all connected and linked up. And so sometimes, again, we just have times of desolation in our life, but one of the ways we respond to that is holding fast to that web of relationships, to justice, but make sure especially that you're not missing kind of the earlier, more fundamental links in that chain, because that may be where there may be a great divorce occurring of grace, where I'm missing some of the graces God wants to give me because I'm putting something higher in front of something. I'm getting my higher and lower is all goofed up here because it depends on how you conceptualize it. Something secondary in front of something that's more primary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. I'd never thought of it like that. So now, with the time that we have left, I'd like to get into some practicals with the different stages in life, because part of why we want to weather situations well, and learn to weather them well and learn to be stable people is not, it is for the sake of our souls, but it's also for the sake of other people's souls.
Right.
Because we give context to other people's lives.
Right.
And the world is ready to give context to our lives. You don't have to search. The world will search you out and tell you how you should be living this stage in life. And so
it'll give you a narrative. Give you a narrative. Yeah.
Yeah. This is how wives behave. This is how husbands behave. This is how, whatever.
You're a victim, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, don't throw words out there.
My point is, there's 1,000 narratives out there.
We can't use language.
And we want to only attend to what the Lord is telling us about life, His truth. Yeah.
Yeah. So, keeping this in mind as a Christian, the framework for our existence is the family.
Yeah.
Everyone comes from a family, and we have broken families. I know I don't think that there's any one of us that can think of our family in a big, like all of my family members without there being hurt in there, without wincing a little bit. But the reality is that we all come from families. It is God's primordial way of continuing His church and His creation here on earth. So, in the beginning of our lives and at the end of our lives, we are taken care of. And in the middle of our lives, we take care. Yeah. And the work of the Christian never stops. We don't retire. Maybe when you're a baby and you don't know what work is. A baby's got work to do. They got to poop and they got to eat. Sorry. The work of the Christian never stops. They're doing their Christian duty. So we need to be mindful of those in other stages, as well as attending to the duties in our own stage.
Yeah.
So I kind of for the talk, because I knew there were going to be children there. I wasn't talking to kids. I broke it up to college and single life. Mm-hmm. Okay. Newly married young children,
sure.
Empty nesters, and then old age, wise old age, which I hope I'm wise.
Getting real here. That's coming up real fast.
Yeah.
So fast. Oh my gosh.
Keep calling with youths, babe. So college and single life, you need to attend to the reality that you are more free. I know sometimes that like education makes you feel like you are less free, or the system, the education system that you're in, you know, or the work that you're trying to accomplish to get into your career, to get into the next stage of your life. It feels overburdened, but you are more free than you will be in the future.
Right.
So you have to really attend to that freedom and do something with it. Binge the sacraments. I mean, that college is a time for you to be binging the sacraments.
You're just full of good t-shirt slogans. Hey, patrons, a quick commercial here. Like I think it's $50 patrons. We do actually now have a mug. We got a couple people got to send mugs to now, but Teresa's last cool slogan for mugs was "I love reality." That's our Prudence quip right there. So maybe binge the sacraments will be our next one. Anyway, continue.
College students binge
the sacraments.
I don't know. Somebody comment or whatever below. Is there a below on these things?
Where am I? Yes. The YouTube.
If you have a better, cooler way to say it. Okay. Yeah, like binge the sacraments.
Well, it's what you were saying earlier. Again, the truth of, let's call it this, like adult but single still. So like you're not in your vocation yet. You're not married. You're not committed. There's this liminal space, whether or not somebody's going to college, or the kind of education they're receiving. There's this space between childhood and being locked into a vocation.
Yeah, very few people go from being a child to married.
Right. I mean, there's usually some
convent.
space in there. And that is a time of real freedom, because you don't have to be. You can leave your school, and you're not married yet. You don't have a ring on your finger. You're not committed to a convent,
you
or
can drop your
you're not
class.
a priest. Like that is the time you have a lot of freedom, and that's why it's also a time of getting into a lot of trouble. But you can use it. You can make a choice to say, I'm going to use this freedom as a time of consolation. I'm going to use this time to binge the sacraments, to grow in a prayer life, to set some patterns in my life that I want to carry me all the way through whatever happens next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I lost my train of thought. Pregnancy.
Binge the sacraments.
Binge the sacraments. No. So what are the things that will prepare me for my vocation? So being mindful of another stage in life that's coming to you.
That's a great point.
And also being mindful that there are other people in other stages of life who have needs. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a good time to volunteer for babysitting. This is Kimberly Hahn in Steubenville had this amazing system set up where the college kids at Franciscan got paired with a mother, a mother's helper, or, like a mother's helper's position.
Right.
And the people the students who came are like without their families for the first time, and so they would come and help for a certain number of hours, watch the kids, with the exchange, that they would participate in a family meal. So you get to be present at a family, and a lot of these kids came from bigger families, miss their siblings, and then also that they get to do laundry at your house.
Right.
And so it was just like this, like
it was great.
It helped them be mindful of the stage that they may enter into, but then at the same time offering service to that stage when they're in a more free state.
Yeah.
That they're more masters of their own time.
Yeah, one of the goofy, I think last episode we were talking about socialization and different aspects of that. One of the goofy things that happens in modern society is that we keep kind of like lock people into their stage of life, whether it's their age group in school, or the stage of life that they're in, and they kind of stay there, and they're not exposed to other parts of life, and it contributes to people being very isolated and inward and self-referential, and kind of just seeing the whole world through the lens of this particular current stage I'm in. But the reality is, life is always changing. You're only a college student or a single unmarried adult, maybe for a short time, and even if that lasts for a while, again, in human years, it's still a short time because life is really short. The point is that every stage you're in, you need to be interacting with people from other stages, so you're so keeping the reality in your mind.
You can put it into context when you get there.
This isn't all it is. I was a baby just a few short years ago, and I'm going to be an old person.
And look how much this mom is giving all of her life to that baby. Gosh, that was me. Sometimes I feel like I popped into existence when I was 15.
Right.
And I was totally self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember that people gave up their entire lives for me to exist. And interacting with other stages in life and being mindful of other stages in life really helps you put that into perspective. And then like education, like education is important, but the college experience is not important.
Right.
Fear of missing out is not important. Okay. Like, do I want, thinking about your vocation in the long term, like, do I want to be locked into being an employee? Is that what I want for myself and my family? Do I want somebody else's system telling me, we have a lot of lawyer friends.
Right.
And their wives and young families are in such poverty, and they'll tell you that. Like the demands on young lawyers entering into the system is like so heavy on families, so heavy on marriages. And it's like asking those questions, saying like, is that what I want? Do I want to develop a skill? Do I want to become a master of that skill? Do I want to pass that skill on to my children? Do I want to be able to step back away from the career? Like, is this education towards a career, or is this towards my betterment and becoming a better citizen of the kingdom?
So many of decisions that we make, financial decisions, educational decisions, vocational decisions, sexual decisions at different stages of life, we don't do them prudently. And it's what contributes to that lack of prudence is that we're staying very isolated, not just into the reality that life is short and you will die at a very short time from now, like it's going to happen, life is short, but also that even narrower still, that we interpret all of life through the current stage that I'm in and I'm kind of in love with. I love this stage of life right now. And I'm thinking, I'm going to feel the same. I'm going to value the same things. I'm going to be the same person 10 years from now or 20 years from now. But like life is always changing, and exposing ourselves to other stages, it keeps the reality, it keeps the reality in front of our eyes that, hey, life is short and I need to be looking where this is going. The kind of life that I'm building now is what I'm going to live with. And so if I'm not living a good life now, why am I expecting it's going to get better? I need to live the virtues now that I want to have there. I need to be building now. And this is true not just in my human life, but in my eternal life. Like we have to be living now the way we would want to be living throughout whatever changes come. You know?
A great book for this stage in life is Leah Libresco's Building the Benedict Option, full of practicals. She's a super practical lady.
I think Jen's book, Jen Fulwiler's book.
I've got that in the next stage.
Oh, well.
Sorry.
We'll
move to the next stage.
I'm just really anticipating the future stages of this conversation.
Because that's where we are right now. So newly married couples and young families. My number one, when I was thinking through, like, if I could give advice to somebody who's just getting married, would be finding a support group of faithful Catholic women, husband getting connected with faithful Catholic men, maybe even, a few years ahead of the game in you, to fill in the context of marriage and raising children, sex, all that stuff. I'm really shocked to find how even if you go into marriage fully committed to the Catholic ideal, living it, trying to make Catholic decisions, how quickly the world gives you a context of what sex and marriage looks like, and how you believe that simply like practicing NFP is like all that it's going to take. And so I'm not saying don't practice NFP. What I'm saying is that if you don't know that other couples go through long periods of abstinence, okay, if you don't know that other couples struggle with like if you don't know that your wife is going through a postpartum crazy period right now, like if you don't have other men to talk to about that and be like, oh yeah, like every woman, like, yeah, she's just going to cry buckets and seem really irrational and unreasonable. And her whole life is changing right now because it does. I mean, it does. And that's a really, that's a whole nother discussion. I want to have somebody on to talk about postpartum health. Yeah. But if you don't have someone to talk to about that, right, you have no framework to put this, or like the fact that our grandparents sometimes spent years in abstinence, right? Or that when we get to the ends of our lives, it's not going to look the same as it does now. Again,
just like even with the consolation and desolation, that is looking to an older spiritual brother or father in the faith who's saying, hey, there's going to be ups times in your spiritual life and down times. That's true of everything in life. Your marriage is going to have a honeymoon period, and then it's going to have the reality of, just like normal life, and then it'll come back up and they'll be good. But that's just part of life. And you can read about that, but you need to have other people who keep that reality in front of your eyes, that there's going to be ups and downs. And I need to hold to what I know to be true during the downs. I need to learn during the ups.
Yeah. I remember, so baby showers in my family, baby showers, weddings, whatever, they're never just for the person who's getting married. It's always an opportunity for family members to invite all of their cousins and aunts and things and, have a big old party, So at my baby shower, there were a lot of people I wouldn't even recognize and be able to tell you their names, but they're extended family members that my mom was really excited to connect with. And I remember sitting there amidst my great aunts and cousins, second removed, I don't know, and they were talking about the crazy feelings they had after they had babies. When this baby won't stop screaming and the window's open. What would happen if I just threw that baby out? And you're like, or so then someone's laughing yeah, I felt like I wanted to just dump this hot tea on the baby's head. And you're like, oh, these women are crazy. But then when you get into that period in life, and you're having thoughts like, I can't put my baby down because a car might crash through the wall and kill the baby, or my husband can't leave the house because I know as soon as he does, he's going to get hit by a car and go into a million people. And you're like, why am I having these insane obsessive thoughts? You at least can say, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. This has happened. I need to talk to someone about this. And they're not going to think I'm crazy because this happens to people, But it you can put it into some kind of a context as opposed to just hiding that feeling away and trying to pretend that it's not there, and that everyone's going to be ashamed of you if you talk about it.
Right.
Yeah. Those, you're looking at me the same way that I looked at
I'm just imagining people who haven't had babies here and just be.
Well, no,
when you go to the hospital and you have a baby, they make you watch a video that tells you, don't shake your baby.
And you laugh
and
at
you're kind of duh.
Yeah.
But then the baby won't stop screaming one night, and you're like, oh, this is okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna lay the baby down.
So other people feel
go drink
this.
some tea and let the baby cry a little bit.
Baby's not gonna die if it cries in the crib.
So that's the point. Place. Is that we need to be hear from other people some of the crazy thoughts that might enter our own minds. So that we we're ready for the consolation.
Because
and
the world is ready to tell you. The world's ready to tell a couple that. There's all kinds of reasons for abstinence. It's not just for preventing children. It's you have surgery, or you're tired, or you're postpartum, or what you're busy. I mean, there's a million other reasons why you don't have sex. But the world's just going to tell you, well, that's what porn's for, or masturbate, or this girl at work is cute, or something like that. And it's just
or you just, I guess you must just not been meant to be.
That's right.
This marriage can't work because you haven't, a season of difficulty.
Yeah. Or postpartum feelings, and people are like, that's why I got the tubes tied, because I knew I wasn't like the other women who like having children. But then you get around people who have 10 kids, and they're like, oh yeah, those feelings are just normal and they'll pass. And you'll get through them, and maybe go to your doctor and get blood work. You're like, oh, because I was ready to sterilize myself. Because that's what everybody else said to do. So the world will be ready to tell you what to do. You need to build a context for people who believe the reality.
One of the sub virtues or perfections of prudence is docility.
Upside down.
Which is precisely what we're talking about here.
I got so excited I turned my notes upside down. So.
Which means learning about life from other people, being open, to the greater context of reality that someone else's experience can give us. That's what we've been talking about here, is this docility. So.
And so all other things to think about in this stage of life, what do you want for your family? How are you going to accomplish it?
Which stage of life are we on?
Newly married and young families.
Got it. Cool.
Do you want your husband to have a raise this year, or do you want him to be home early and have more vacation days? Do you want to plan on being somebody who will care for family members? We knew this before we even got married, that we were going to have a plan to care for aging family members no matter where we lived, whether it was a small apartment or a small house. Right now, we knew what room we were going to change into. We knew what we were going to do. We kind of ran that scenario with each place we lived, because that was really important to us. So do you want to work, if you want to work together make a rallying cry. You brought up Jennifer Fulwiler's book. One Beautiful Dream is an excellent and hilarious book. Like, you will laugh. You'll read this book like all in 2 days and you'll laugh so hard because she's a comedian. She's so funny. One Beautiful Dream. I didn't have a copy to show you guys because I've given it away so many times that we just don't even have a hard copy in our house
In many
anymore.
ways, that's what it's about. It's about the stages of life, you know.
And there's another great question that I think hers is like the fiction of, because I know she knows this book and this guy really well. Pat Lencioni's 3 Questions for Frantic Families. That's almost like if you want to plan, if you want to work through the plan and create a plan, they're both excellent books and they really go hand in hand.
Right.
If you are looking for fellowship, I know being a young mom is really lonely. Being a young husband is really lonely because the person you married, like, is going through all of these changes that you never expected.
You're so busy and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a period of life where you need other people in a similar situation. Like, when I get together with guys, it's always like after 8 o'clock. Yep, exactly. Because we can put the kids to get bed first and give our wives a break, go, get a beer. And so, like, you do need community of people who get that and are a similar stage of life as well.
Yeah. When we moved from Steubenville, which we were only a part of this community for like a year and a half, but it was very clear that they had this gorgeous, like, multi-generational, supportive Catholic community. And everybody had a subset in their own stage in life, and everybody was taken care of, or at least attempted to take care of. And I knew when we moved to Perrysburg that I wanted that. So I just started asking moms at the back of church, like when I had my babies and I was standing at the back of church and somebody else had their baby, like, hey, do you want to have a play date sometime? Our kids are the same age. And here's a secret, like, nobody will say no to your face because we don't know how to do that anymore in society. So everybody will say yes to your face, and just exchange numbers. And eventually, like, just by hosting play dates once a week and a mom's night after bedtime, a couple, once every couple of weeks, we grew this group in just 6 years till there's 70 women in this group. And it's very regular, and we're very good at taking care of each other now. Like, everybody gets a big old meal train, and, somebody puts out there, I bought too much beef, which was me last week. Does anyone want to buy a quarter of a cow? And I had like 10 offers in about 15 minutes. Like, people are just very good at taking care now. And that was as simple as just like asking someone to have a play date with me in the back of church. Like, if you see that person, you're like, I kind of like that person's family. I like the way they look. I like the way the husband and wife look at each other. I'm just going to ask them over, Something just as simple as that.
Right.
And you can do small acts of service that already fit into your home. This is key. Like, in this stage of life, service is hard. You can't serve the way you always thought. Like, I'm going to take all of my kids to a soup kitchen and we'll be the best people. Like, you can serve in ways that already fit into your existing family life. Like, we have people over all the time, like at least once a week. We're always having priests over because priests need to be around your kids. I know that doesn't seem like the kind of advice people are giving now, but they really do. They're men who come from families. They come from large extended families, and then they're all alone, and sometimes with only business relationships, only mentor relationships. Like, sometimes they just need to be around kids in normal settings,
right?
Sometimes my priests really surprise me. They come over and they're just like, let's read this book. Let's lightsaber fight. I mean, they're just ready to jump in and like hang out.
Yeah. That's one of the unique gifts that at this stage of life that you can give, for the young married with kids stage of life. You can't do the things you did when you're a college student. You can't binge in the sacraments necessarily. You can't go do a bunch of service projects. There's just things you can't do practically if you're being prudent with your role, but you can make a gift of your family. Now, obviously, you would be prudent and it has to make sense. And, there's all kinds of caveats you can give, but nevertheless, the gift of just the presence of your family, even the messiness, the messy hospitality of your family. That's a big thing that we're real big on, that messy hospitality too. It's
just survival. Like, I want to have friends and I want to have people over. So they're just going to have to step over the crap on the floor. So, okay, we're moving to a different stage. Empty nest. So maybe your kids are older, maybe they're not necessarily out of the house, maybe they're older and kind of like self-sufficient. So that's really different than being in the trenches with like little kids having emergencies all the time up in your face, whether or not they're really emergencies. So I really want to just meditate on this. Like the work of the Christian never stops. It never stops. I'm going to steal this from, well, I'm not going to steal it because I'm going to cite it. So this is Mark Barnes at New Polity.
Nice.
I think that this is maybe in the retirement episode of their podcast. The Christian life is characterized by work. This does not mean that the Christian life is characterized by work for a particular company. Why do we work? Why do we labor? Once we get beyond the needs for material survival, the popes have been very clear that we labor for others. The obligation to build up the kingdom of heaven for others doesn't cease. When you're finally getting to your retirement, the idea that you no longer have to do good works to build up the kingdom of heaven is false. Your work still has to be actively pulling in the kingdom of heaven. And again, that quote, which I did steal from Mark Barnes at the beginning of this, in the beginning of our lives and at the end of our lives, we are taken care of. In the middle, we take care. Yeah. In this stage of life, when your children are self-sufficient and maybe they're not giving you a lot of things to do for yourself, this is a great time. A priest once told me these are the women that you get to babysit for events, right? Because they don't have grandkids yet and they miss having kids in the house. So be looking for ways to serve that we couldn't serve with children in the house. And attend to the reality that you are more free. Just like when you were a college student, you are more free.
Yeah. A virtue we haven't talked about yet, we hit all the other cardinal virtues, but temperance, one aspect of all these stages is just recognizing that, so on the one hand, as you just said, there's no stage in which like we're done with the spiritual life. Like, we can stop like doing the active Christian life and just kind of rest on our laurels. That doesn't ever happen. The work continues, imitating Christ, doing his good work, doing what he calls us to do. But it changes. And one of the things that can mess us up is that we get really attached to a certain stage of life. Our desire to continue doing the kind of thing that we're already comfortable and excited about, that can trip us up because we have to temper that desire, because those things were good, but they were for a purpose. They were out of obedience. They were embracing that stage of life. And we need to have a loose grasp on those when the Lord comes in and says, okay, now it's time to move on to a different stage, and there's different work to be done.
It's a thing to assert your independence and say, I will not babysit for my grandchildren. I will not be that person.
It's becoming a thing.
And you know why it always gets broken and you're always like, oh, that woman gave in. Well, it's because because God draws us out of ourselves and we fall in love and we want those kids just like we wanted our children. My grandpa said that. And you know what? My grandpa was my best friend. I was his little best friend. He babysat me for years. He was my only babysitter. He retired from his factory where he stood on his feet for like 30 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not babysitting, Jenny. And he did. He babysat me every single day and we were best friends. Yeah. I've got a host of family members who said they weren't going to babysit their grandkids, and they're babysitting their grandkids, and they love it, and they can't wait, and all they want to talk about is their grandkids.
Yeah,
that's God. That's God working through you. So can you, some practicals, can you offer to babysit during a parish mission? Can you say, you know what? I don't need to hear Dr. Hahn or awesome Father Nathan Cromley speak for like the 40th time. I've listened to them on the radio. I've got their CDs. I pull them up on YouTube and see them on AWTN. I'm going to let a husband and wife sit together for this parish mission, and I'm going to watch their kids. You get a parish mission for 3 days. You've got 4 or 5 kids. That's like $50, $60 a night for babysitting. Like, can you offer up whatever the heck Scott Hahn, who is amazing, by the way. He is an awesome guy. Whatever the heck he was going to say, you can offer that up and trust that God is going to give you the grace that you need in your stage of life by offering this particular sacrifice for someone. Yeah. Can you double your meal size to bring to a homebound parishioner once or twice a week to keep them out of assisted living?
We need Ethan coming here. Our producer back there behind the camera.
He's making all kinds of
He was just
motions.
talking about this beforehand about the stage of life that his parents are in, and how, again, there's a greater freedom. There's lots of stuff around. There's big meals. There's new opportunities if you're open to them to share and to give that maybe you didn't have a few years ago. And so,
yeah,
we got to get the Ethan Cam. Yeah, he's giving us thumbs
yeah,
up
we
there.
need. Yeah, we need to think of. He's really cool. Sorry, I just met him. He's really cool.
I agree.
Can you sit next to a family during Mass and offer to snuggle with one of their children?
Or just not give them the stink eye when the kids are being loud.
I don't even want to go. You need to do more than that. You need to do more than not give them the stink eye.
Encourage, say it's you're cool.
You need to have your heart broken by these little children and see the poverty of the parents, man.
We're getting sentimental here. Press on.
Sorry. If your decision is to retire and to retreat, this is the context you're using to shape your children and your community. If your goal in life is to put aside money for retirement so that you can be Jimmy Buffett, I love Jimmy Buffett, by the way, but it's so that you can be Jimmy Buffett for the rest of your life, this is the context you are setting for your children. And this is what they're going to do. They're going to put away all their money for their retirement and think about getting the heck out of Dodge, wherever Dodge is. I don't know what that is, but that's the thing. This is the context. If you set the context that you don't want to be a burden to them someday, then they are going to be a burden to their children. And they're going to worry about the same thing. They're going to worry about being the burden.
Thing. No one wants to be a burden. We all got to be separate. We all got to be isolated.
So are you making care about are you making decisions about your elder care? Are you thinking within the system or are you being creative? The system has one way. The man, whatever, has one way. God has an infinite amount of ways that are completely individual to every single person and every single family to unleash his divine creativity. Are you asking for your desire of your family? The burden of care is a huge blessing. You wouldn't think that when somebody brings a child into the world and they're burdened with taking care of that newborn, that it's a bad burden. You want to take it away from them. You see it as a way in which they are being brought to life anew. And taking care of aging and elderly relatives causes us to grow in virtues. Oftentimes I want my parents to ask me for more. Like, what do you mean you didn't have food? We have lots of food. We live 12 minutes away. Don't let me hear Dad say you didn't have food. Gosh. I want my parents to ask for more. It's not a burden, it's a joy. So, and younger people, going back to the younger crowd, are we having discussions with our spouses and then with our parents of what we want for their aging care? What place do we want for them in our children's lives? Are we expressing to them that we want them more than we want our money? The world is telling your aging relatives that they need to put money aside for when they die to give to you. Is that what you want? Truly? Or do you want them emptying out their 401k to build a house on your property so that they can just be there and be with your kids? Is that what you want? You want their money after they're dead? I mean, truly, ask yourself that question. Or would you rather have them empty out their 401k, move across the country, and be with you? Sorry, just getting mad.
Preach it,
Are we afraid to ask because we're afraid that we're going to interrupt their well-earned vacation? Right? I mean, truly, am I afraid to even say it because they've worked so hard? They deserve to just go on a boat for the rest of their lives and just be out of our picture. Is that what they want?
Is that what would make them happy and holy?
Yeah. Are we preparing our children for the reality that their parents will grow old someday, and that their nieces and nephews and aunts and uncles and priest uncle will someday Frunkle, I don't know, will need to be taken care of? These are discussions we have with our kids now. And these are examples that we set that they hurt. They're hard. They're disruptive. But we need to set the culture and the context, or we're building in them not to be a burden, that there's always a chance that you may be a burden. Well, the reality is we're all a burden all the time, right? We all have burden times and we all have gift times. And that's just the reality of life. So put that in your cap. Suck on it? No, that doesn't.
That doesn't even work at all.
No, mixing metaphors.
That's all really good, babe. But again, I mean, we're capping a few things here. You started at the beginning directing our attention again to prudence, that all important virtue that opens up these other opportunities of virtue. And today we talked about kind of prudence across time, across days of consolation and desolation, seasons of life of greater freedom or greater limitation, seasons of life of greater receiving, when we come into this world, when we leave this world, and seasons of life in which we are called to give radically. A final quote by Mark Barnes here. I'm going to wrap this off.
You just go listen to him. You don't need to listen to us.
Well, prudence is, because I think it was in the context of talking about the rich young ruler who comes to Jesus and says, hey, I've lived a good life. What do I do? Inherit eternal life. And Jesus says, great. Looks at him, loves him, and says, now sell all you have and follow me. And he's like, gosh. And how do we interpret that? And I think it was in the context of that Mark Barnes pointed out that prudence is not about whether to live out the gospel radically. It's just about how. And so again, like this thing of retirement and like maybe there's a time when the work is done and I can just rest on my laurels and relax now. No. There's never a moment in our lives in which we're not called to radically live out the gospel in imitation of Jesus Christ. The question is how. Mm-hmm. And that changes in different seasons, different times. But in virtue, we adapt ourselves to those times and we try to embrace them. We try to get the most out of those opportunities that God has given us.
Sometimes you're in such dire straits that all you can do is pray and offer up your sacrifices as a penance, particularly thinking about the end of your life, but if you're saying to yourself, like, I can't even babysit for a parish event, that's not even something I can take on. Perhaps you can just be there and read to the kids, or just sit there and watch them play. If you can do laundry, you can have a family drop off their laundry once a week, or if you teach piano. I mean, like, I would love it if somebody came to my house and taught my kids piano. So, I mean, there's so many. This is what I'm talking about. Systems put you in one peg, and you can do one thing. The one thing you can do is sit in a home and retire and grow plants, which I hope I'm growing plants till the end of my life.
Yes.
So nothing against the plants, but God's divine creativity.
In case you're listening, plants.
Yeah. I expect you to grow.
Sorry.
But I mean, like, God's divine creativity is so individual and unique and just waiting to explode from your yes. There are millions of different ways that you could serve your neighbor, even if you're homebound.
Yeah.
Even if you're not mobile. Ask God. Ask God to show you creatively the needs of your neighbors.
Yeah. Well, it's all to say we can say no more because there's no more to be said.
And we're running out of babysitting time, actually.
Yeah, seriously. Let us know what you think. Again, we went through a lot today, but this is a good conversation. Thanks, babe, for sharing your reflections with me and with our friends here in the audience. Again, we hope you enjoyed this conversation. We'd like you to continue to be part of the conversation. Let us know what you think. But also, if you like what we're doing on this show, please check out our Patreon community at elevateordinary.com. There's different ways to support the show there, but in that community, kind of behind the scenes community, there's more special stuff for you. We're going to be starting a book study here soon and some other fun stuff, as well as, little perks and thank you gifts for those who join. So check that out. And either way, download the Awaken app at theawakenapp.io. It's the best way to follow this and other shows here on Awaken Catholic. And there's also other cool stuff available in that app. And again, hold fast to the truth, the good times, the bad times. Hold fast to what you know to be true. Practice the virtues in those times of plenty, those times of consolation, so that you're ready. We're ready together, practicing together to be ready for the curveballs that life throws at us, that God allows life to throw at us to help us to grow. So God bless you. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye. A big thanks to Select International Tours for sponsoring this episode of Elevate Ordinary. Check them out at selectinternationaltours.com for your next spiritual pilgrimage. See you later.